Good morning, Caxton audience. You're back with Marietta Lombard and Ponnie Moodley from Parenting 101. Ponnie is a Johannesburg-based education expert, and she's been advising our parents on how they can help their children with the schoolwork sent home during the COVID-19 lockdown. Good morning, Ponnie, and what will we be discussing today?
Yeah, good morning, Marietta. It's good to be back. Today we'll be discussing the whole child development approach. So basically, when we look at a child, often we only concentrate on the academic development of a child. For me, that is the last thing we should focus on. For me, you should look at the physical development of a child, the intellectual or psychological development, the emotional development, which is these days called emotional intelligence, the social development, and also part of a child comes cultural development. So what is physical development? Children go through various stages from birth to adulthood. So we need to take cognizance of that. So basically when a child is born, they are very sensory beings. If you notice, they're always touching things, smelling things, feeling things, tasting things. So we need to consider when we are educating children, those factors. So for me, always look at a child who's young. Give them things that are concrete and practical. They also, when you look at a child, they often don't understand where they begin and where the next person begins. So you call that an extension of self. So they are very aware of their physical, more operational, they become analytical. If you notice your young child, they often start asking questions. So that for me is, that questioning, they want to know, they're curious, they want to analyze things. We should never suppress the questioning, because often we don't take time to answer the question, or even if we don't have the answer, we should approach it in a way where you tell the child, let's find out ourselves, or how can we find out? So going to the next stage of physical development. By the way, this is a huge topic. I think we should go in future and explore each of these aspects. But I just want to give you an overall view for now. So the next stage is the concrete stage. Basically, 7 to 11-year-olds, they start observing and drawing conclusions. So we need to accentuate that, encourage that. Sometimes they also regress. For example, that's when you might find children sucking thumbs, bedwetting, they're trying to express themselves, but they're not quite sure how. So we need to be aware of that. And then we also have the concrete operational. By the way, this is a person by the name of Jean Piaget. He came up with these different stages. And the last stage he looked at was the rational thinking child. So I'm sure you're looking at your 14-year-old child. To them, they want to make sense of the world. So they want to express themselves. They want to manage themselves. So we need to allow them to do that. Of course, we need to also guide them along. You can't just leave children to their own devices either. When it comes to intellectual or psychological development, we need to, as young as my students are, I share with them how their brain works. And it's very important to share that with children, because if you know how your brain works, you'll be able to do things that will encourage your brain, help your brain, and also in the end, remember information. So we call that metacognition. Problem solving, of course, is very important. So when you look at intellectual development of a child, you need to take cognizance of that. Emotional intelligence is where you become aware of yourself. We call it self-awareness, managing yourself. Basically, are you able to do things for yourself? Also establishing relationships with other people and being socially aware. Our children in the 21st century don't always know how to be socially aware. with digital devices and spending time alone, they often lose that skill of how to understand what emotional intelligence is and what emotional development is. With that comes social development. What are your interpersonal skills? What's your sense of community? You know, with the lockdown at the moment, I think that sense of community is so important. Now, for me, community is not just your larger city or town. Your community starts with your family. That's your first community. So encourage your children to be aware of each person in the home. How do you communicate with them? What impact do you have on the world? Everyone has an impact on their world. And their world, again, starts with their family and themselves. And of course, you know, within social development, all family life does affect us. So for example, if you're going through a divorce, your children will be affected. I mean, they often become the center of the divorce. So we often don't address that. And it's very important for us to now change our view and be aware of what children are going through. And the last thing I'd like to touch on is cultural development. You know, having taught in America for 11 years, some of my children did not understand my accent. They looked at me and they say, you don't really look African. You spell words differently on the board. So, you know, we all come with a cultural package. So being aware of our accents, the way we spell things, the way we interact with people, body language. Some cultures you are allowed to look in their eyes. In some cultures you do not look in somebody else's eyes because it's disrespect. So we need to be aware of all of those. So how do we as adults actually you know, promote the different approaches to child development? Firstly, give clear boundaries. You know, I've touched on this before, having a routine. Every child needs a boundary. We need boundaries as adults. We can't just now with our lockdown go and walk up and down the street. No, we have to follow the laws and the rules. In your family, there are expectations and there are accepted behavior and unacceptable behavior. So that is how you set a tone for your family. Model behavior. You know, we often say, don't do what I say, do what I do. It doesn't work like that. Because whatever we say comes with verbal and non-verbal behavior. Children mirror us. It's a natural thing. If you look at the animal world, babies will model whatever the adult does. So we have to be very sensitive and aware. Take a second before you react. Just think about it. I promise you, you will change your perspective. Being aware of learning styles, that's also another topic I'm going to touch in the future. We all have different learning styles and we also have different multiple intelligences. So whether you're a visual learner, an auditory learner, we need to complement those approaches. Be proactive as a parent. I think at this point in South Africa and the world, parents are now taking another role. And being proactive is going to make a big difference in your family. Celebrate diversity. Now, diversity, we always talk about or think about cultural diversity. That definition extends far beyond culture. We have diversity of learning. We have diversity of intelligences, as I mentioned, but also between you and I, we have similar characteristics, but we also have very different characteristics.
Yes.
And if we take cognizance of that, our learning, our interaction with people becomes much more valuable. And provide guidance for your children. Make it safe. And remember, there are many pathways to learning. We have different talents, different abilities. But in the end, we need to validate those, but also go beyond and challenge our children. Our children are far more intelligent than we might give them credit for. So I hope this helped.
Ponnie, again, from all Caxton audiences, thank you so much. I think our parents will become the student and you become the master. And our children will only benefit from your advice.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, I always believe that the more you learn, the more you can share. That's always been something that drives me. So even as an educator, if I don't update my skills, if I don't watch videos, read up, go and research, I will not be able to offer a high standard to my children. So thank you, Marietta.
And we will talk again on Monday.
Yes, perfect. And be safe out there during the lockdown. And remember to have time for yourself and for your family. You have got to bring some balance in there. I'll see you on Monday.
See you Monday, Ponnie.